Hey, Darrin.
Oh, hey, Justin.
How you doing?
You know what? If I was doing any better, I'd hate myself.
Hey, goals. So, welcome everybody to the Week 3 podcast, where every third week of the month, Darrin and I sit down and talk about whatever it is we want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
This month, it's my turn. And this is more geared towards the late Gen Xers, millennial crowd.
So, like 30s to 40s?
So, us.
Yeah, okay.
So, cast your mind back, dear listeners and dear Darrin. It's fall. It's fall. So let's just say September.
Okay.
As an arbitrary month. September 1989, Saturday morning, 7 a.m. What are you doing?
I am getting a big old bunch of peanut butter crunch, a big old bowl, and I'm going to sit down in front of my TV and try to find something on the 3 channels we get.
And why specifically are you watching TV on Saturday morning?
Well, I've got a chance of getting one of 2 things, either the World Wrestling Federation Weekly Challenge or Saturday morning cartoons.
Exactly. So that's what we're talking about this month. Saturday morning cartoons. Kids, I'm going to date myself. Kids these days. Seriously, kids these days don't know what a Saturday morning cartoon block is because they stopped doing it.
Yeah, the programming blocks just don't exist anymore.
They just don't exist anymore. But also they have 24-hour cartoon networks. Like there's Cartoon Network. There's, things like Nickelodeon and all that stuff. They have access to cartoons whenever they want. Netflix and streaming is a thing now. They can watch whatever they want when they want. When Darrin and I were growing up, that wasn't the case.
Back in the late 20th century.
Yeah, back in the 1900s.
Yeah.
In the late 1900s. The internet, specifically the time frame I'm talking about, the internet didn't really exist for us. And so if you wanted to know what was coming on TV, you had to either watch the channel and it would tell you, or you had to go out and buy a magazine called a TV Guide.
Or unless you were like one of those rich kids that had like the TV Guide channel.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah. It was basically like before you had like the guide on your remote. This was a channel that would just have this rolling guide at like the lower half of the screen. Like, here's a channel, here's what's on. And then the upper half, they'd be selling you something. Usually it's like an infomercial or whatever. And occasionally it's like a wrestling pay-per-view promo from like one of the lower card guys who happens to be there. So, yeah, I guess that's a week 3 for another day.
There you go. Okay. So we are talking about Saturday morning cartoons. And for me, I would get up. There would be Hostess donuts, the powdered and the chocolate, the mini ones.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would get those and some milk, and I would sit down and I would watch cartoons until something else came on or I was told to go outside and play. So Saturday morning cartoons began as a thing in the mid to late 60s. They were all shows that were geared towards to be appropriate for children. And a lot of them were reruns of animated series broadcast in primetime in the 50s, like The Flintstones. That was a prime time thing.
Yeah, it was a spoof on the Honeymooners.
Exactly. And then you get things like Hanna-Barbera coming in with like Space Ghost and Scooby-Doo and stuff like that. And so we start getting into this golden era of cartoons that a lot of people it's just out there. But these were like Saturday morning exclusives. Like they were aired on the big 3, ABC, NBC, CBS, on Saturday mornings from like 7 to noon or 1 or whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
on the market.
Yeah, I remember growing up in the St. Louis market. It was like, I think the earliest one was ABC, which would start at like 6 a.m. But usually stuff would like transition to live action by like 10:30 or 11.
Yeah, and even some of those live action things would be
Power
more
Rangers,
kid appropriate. Yeah, Power Rangers or Saved by the Bell or whatever. So typically, you're looking at like 8 to 1 Eastern time. So adjust accordingly. And they also, but there was some other live action stuff at this time, like Thunderbirds, where they were marionette puppets.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah. By 1972, a lot of the action program had been removed from Saturday morning blocks due to something called the Action for Children's Television. And they were concerned with commercialism and violence and antisocial attitudes and stuff like that. So there were still cartoons on, but a lot of shows kind of just went by the wayside.
Right.
And by 78, the Federal Trade Commission had actively put a ban on all advertising during these programming blocks for toys and stuff like that. Because, you wanted your kids to be entertained, but not sold to.
Boy, that didn't last.
Yeah. And it was during this time that we start seeing a resurgence of like Scooby-Doo and also the inclusion of like Schoolhouse Rock.
Oh, yeah.
And that is a week 3 for another time.
That's a good one.
It is, yeah. And, Schoolhouse Rock was just this short little vignettes of educational things, but it was put to song and animated and whatever. And then 1982 comes along. And
I was born, and everything's over.
And President Ronald Reagan. And he loosened the programming and advertising restrictions, which led to essentially half-hour toy commercials with, like, He-Man and Transformers.
So this will be the only time you hear this on a Geek Cave affiliated show, but thank you, President Reagan.
Yes. Question mark? Yes. So, yeah. And this is where Darrin and I come in because, I was born in 81. He was born in 82. So we grew up in this mecca of Saturday morning cartoons where it was almost like the Wild West. Everything went. No holds bar, no rules, just right.
Hell, there was a couple shows about the Wild West.
Exactly.
One of them involved anthropomorphic cows, and the other was Bravestar.
Exactly, and we need to get Chad in on the Wild West
Cowboys of Moo Mesa. Yeah,
yes. But during the '80s, specifically the kind of mid '80s, about the time we really started watching Saturday morning cartoons, because things like He-Man were syndicated for a while. But you get into stuff like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Smurfs, Muppet Babies, Garfield and Friends. Then they started showing reruns of Looney Tunes with like the Bugs Bunny and Tweety show. And these are just the ones like on the big 3. There were bigger markets that got like Fox that had other shows that I didn't even know about until I was older.
Yeah.
Because I didn't get that in my area. And from like the mid 80s until the late mid 90s. So we had about a good, 7 or so years where it was just amazing cartoons. About the early 90s is when you start seeing cable networks such as Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, and the Disney Channel really popping up. And so they started to become less about Saturday morning, more about syndication.
Yeah.
Because those shows would go in, you could show them whenever. Like there was a whole block of Disney cartoons called the Disney Afternoon, which aired Monday through Friday from 3 to
5.
3 to 5, something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
You got about 4 Disney cartoons.
If you were lucky, the network that was syndicating them would have something in addition that would air at maybe 2:30 or 5 to kind of transition you into, okay, it's dinner time, and now the adults get the TV back.
Yeah. Yeah. About 92 is when the real decline started to happen because the big three networks started replacing the Saturday morning animated programs with morning news shows, live action teen oriented shows, and just weird other things.
Yeah, I remember CBS had like the best term I can use to describe it was like a kid-friendly movie, like Saturday mornings. I mean, it had some good stuff like Mouse and the Motorcycle. The movie was one that I saw on CBS a few times, but a lot of times it was like, oh, well, I'm gonna watch something else.
Yeah. And so throughout the 90s and the 2000s, it just started taking a rapid decline. The CW continued to air non-EI cartoons, like educational and informational cartoons, as late as 2014, but the big three networks had stopped around 2006. And that really was the end of an era for a lot of us, elder millennials, as I like to refer to us. Because I still, to this day, sometimes I'll wake up, if I wake up early on a Saturday morning, I like to sleep in now. I'm old. If I wake up early on a Saturday morning, my first thought is, I could watch cartoons. And then I realize, I can watch them anytime.
Yeah. Yeah, it's less special now.
It is less special now. But I have some really, really good memories of just sitting. My parents had a rule. It was on Saturday mornings, let them sleep in. They will wake up in their own time and come out. All I had to do was get my donuts and park my butt in front of the TV and not bother them.
Man, you were very fortunate.
I was an only kid.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I know. But like for a while, I was an only child. But the rule was, yeah, you can watch them unless there are yard sales to be visited. And then it went from like, yeah, there's a new episode of X-Men on to, oh no, there's a new episode of X-Men on, but we're going to 18 different houses today. And by the time we get back, Super Dave is on.
Yeah.
Super Dave.
Yeah. No, my dad worked his butt off during the week. And so Saturday he was relaxing. And my mom, I'm not going to say my mom is antisocial, but she's anti-crowds.
Well, my grandparents, one was fully retired, and the other was close enough.
And so Saturdays were my best day ever because I'd get up and and I'm not even a teenager yet, so I'd get up and I'd watch cartoons all morning long, and then we do stuff. I don't know. I'd go out and play or whatever, this, that, and the other thing. And then Saturday nights would roll around. Mom and Dad would go to bed, and I could stay up as late as I wanted to, provided I was able to get up the next morning and do whatever.
Yeah.
And I'd watch Saturday Night Live.
Nice.
So Saturdays were just this long stretch of, this is amazing. But it all started with Saturday morning cartoons. So what are some of your favorite cartoons that you used to watch on Saturday mornings?
I will tell you, when you told me earlier today that this was the topic, my brain went straight to Alvin and the Chipmunks. And
yes,
it's weird because as an adult, I'm not really super big on the franchise. And I think the movies are god awful. Except for the one animated one with the Chipmunks and the Chipettes doing that race around the world. That was fun.
Well, that was during our era.
There's some problematic shit in there, but it was still good. But Alvin and the Chipmunks. It was the first thing that popped to mind, followed by the Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, the mini Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. And I
gotta get up. I gotta get going.
I
gotta see a friend of mine.
Yeah, he's round and he's fuzzy, and we love him because he's Pooh Bear. But the thing is, like, I tend to kind of get them a little bit conflated with the weekday cartoons. And I was trying real hard to think of, like, what is something I only watched on Saturday mornings? And so it was Winnie the Pooh, it was Alvin and the Chipmunks, but the two that really molded me into the geek before you, Spider-Man the Animated Series and X-Men the Animated Series. I would say Batman, but it was also on during the week. Those two were weekend exclusive in my market. And so that made Saturday a little extra special, or for my grandparents, maybe a little extra difficult if we were yard sailing.
Yeah.
But those are what come to mind for me. And freaking Super Dave, but for other reasons.
For other reasons, yeah. So one of the things that I equate with Saturday morning is stuff like A Pup Named Scooby-Doo.
Oh, yeah.
Garfield and Friends. Do you remember the CBS Story Break?
Wasn't that what I was talking about with the Mouse and the Motorcycle movie? No, different?
No. So the CBS Story Break it started out with Captain Kangaroo as the host.
Okay.
It had this really cool intro with a lot of electric guitar and whatever. And then they would show like a half-hour animated movie.
Oh,
no,
I don't remember this.
A story, basically. And every week it was different.
Huh.
But I do know what you're talking about with the Mouse and the Motorcycle and whatever, and sometimes that was broken up over multiple Saturdays and whatever.
Yeah.
But there's just, like I mentioned earlier, Garfield and Friends, The Real Ghostbusters.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The Real Ghostbusters. Pee-wee's Playhouse. Which, not a cartoon, but it was a Saturday morning thing. Oh, man. There's just a lot of... And there's a lot of bad things that didn't quite... Not bad, but a lot of things that didn't quite catch on. The Pro Stars, do you remember that?
Yeah. Well, you got, like, I think Wayne Gretzky and...
Michael Jordan. Bo Jackson and Michael Jordan. And they were superheroes.
Yeah.
They were a superhero team.
There was also Cops and Crooks.
Cops and Crooks.
Which was shortened to just Cops. There's Starcom, which we've talked about before, which not very many people remember.
Yeah.
Apparently it did really well in Europe, though. Like, it got, like, 2 other seasons in Europe, which is amazing, and I'm going to have to track those down.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, Moo Mesa, what was the one? Street Sharks.
Street Sharks.
That was a Saturday one in my market.
Oh, okay, so here's an obscure one. Rude Dog and the Dweebs.
I've heard of it. I don't think I've seen it.
Yeah. Rude Dog. Think Spuds MacKenzie type dog.
Yeah, wasn't it like MTV's mascot?
No.
Rude Dog? Okay.
I mean, this was like on CBS or something. It was this, quote-unquote rude, but, hip dog who rescues a bunch of not cool dogs from the dog catcher. And it's basically just about thwarting the dog catcher every week.
So
Rob Paulson voiced Rude Dog.
Oh, so it's like Pound Puppies, but cynical.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, yeah, I remember Rude. I'm looking at like a picture of Rude Dog right now because I saw him on shirts, and he was on like skateboard related clothing, stuff like that. I don't think I've ever watched the show though.
It's not. My memory isn't that great, but I remember it being a thing.
Oh, I believe you.
I would be remiss if I did not discuss or bring up the pinnacle of Saturday morning cartoon events. The Cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue.
Oh, God.
I'm not going to go into great detail about it, but this, you got to admit, at the time, this was a big deal because you had every cartoon, like you had Warner Brothers and Disney and a whole bunch of other people getting together to put their cartoon characters in a show to talk to kids about the dangers of drugs. And this aired at the same time on ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, and USA Network, all on April 21st, 1990. You could not get away from this.
It was Avengers Endgame, but with kids' cartoon characters as a dare message.
Exactly. And I'm not going to go into the plot of this, but you had like Bugs and Daffy, Papa Smurf and some other Smurfs, Alvin and the Chipmunks, the Muppet Babies, the Slimer from the Real Ghostbusters, Huey, Dewey, and Louie from DuckTales, Alf from the animated series, Michelangelo from the Ninja Turtles, Winnie the Pooh and Tigger, Garfield, and a bunch of others, all in this, I don't even remember how long it was, 30-some minute show about the dangers of doing drugs. And yeah, it was like a 32-minute thing. It was produced by, Roy Disney was the executive producer behind it. And it's like for one glorious moment, everybody got together and said, okay, we can do this.
Which is just, it's so funny to see the Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Michelangelo, one of the Ninja Turtles, fucking Alf as part of the cast.
Yep.
Cat-eating Alf saying,
Yeah.
You know what, cats are fine, but don't do pot.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And, I mean, just think about that for a minute. For one shining moment, all of this happened, but it would be another 30 years before we would get an official release of the 66 Batman series.
Well, and this was like one of only 2 times that Disney and Warner Brothers directly worked side by side, the other being Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah. So one was for kid safety and the other was for profit.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit's such a good movie, though.
It's such a good movie.
It's so good. We should talk about that all episode.
Yeah, but to wrap things up, Saturday morning cartoons were something that Darrin and myself and Chad and a lot of people around our age grew up with, and I'm sad that it's gone, but I'm glad I got to live through that, because that is something that probably will never be experienced again.
Yeah. It was a magical moment, and I know that TV and pop culture have magical moments for every generation, but for us,
Oh yeah,
I think we were a little bit spoiled.
absolutely.
No, we didn't have access to these 24/7 at our fingertips, but what we did have, the bad stuff got weeded out pretty quick, and what was left was really, really good.
Oh yeah, you'd maybe get half a season of a bad show, and it would be a mid-season replacement with something else just to fill out the time slot, whatever. But the shows that were good stayed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that is all I've got for this month.
Okay.
I guess that makes it your turn next time.
Yeah, I think I got something.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, if be sure to check out our main website, geekcavepodcast.com. Come by and hit us up on Discord. And when the episode drops, come by and say hi and tell us what your favorite Saturday morning cartoon was.
Yeah,
we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, or at least say, "Oh yeah, I remember that."
Oh yeah, I remember that. So yeah, check out our other shows. You want me to watch what? The main Geek Cave podcast. And on YouTube, Retromantics and Geek Cave Plays. So that's it for now.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.